Welcome to Huang-Po 8. Let's see if I can squeeze this in. I don't have much time. I can't remember where I stopped. Alright. Here we go. Question. If I follow this way, and refrain from intellectual process and conceptual thinking, shall I be certain of attaining the goal? Well, it sounds like yesterday's words. Such not intellection, yes, is following the way. Why this talk of attaining and not attaining? The matter is thus. By thinking of something, you create an entity, and by thinking of nothing, you create another. Let erroneous thoughts perish utterly, and then nothing will remain for you to go seeking. Well, let's put it this way. Did you understand yesterday when I read it? Alright, I just don't remember where I left off. But I'm pretty sure I finished the page. Yes. Okay. Alright, here we are. On number 25, page 87. One day, after taking his seat in the great hall, the master began as follows. Since mind is the Buddha, I read this too. The Absolute. It embraces all things, from the Buddhas, enlightened beings, at one extreme, to the meanest of belly-crawling reptiles or insects at the other. All these alike share in the Buddha nature, and all are of the substance of the one mind. So, after his arrival from the West, Bodhidharma transmitted not but the Dharma of the one mind. He pointed directly to the truth that all sentient beings have always been of one substance with the Buddha. He did not follow any of those mistaken methods of attainment, and if you could only achieve this comprehension of your own mind, thereby discovering your real nature, there would be assuredly nothing for you to seek either. You know what? I had the idea that I read that one already, but I didn't listen to it. I second-guessed myself. Number 26. Question. Well, how then does a man accomplish this comprehension of his own mind? The answer. That which is asked is the question in your own mind. But if you were to remain quiescent, and to refrain from the smallest mental activity, its substance would be seen as a void. You would find it formless, occupying no point in space, and falling neither into the category of existence, nor into that of non-existence, because it is imperceptible. Bodhidharma said, Mind, which is our real nature, is the unbegotten and indestructible womb. In response to circumstances, it transforms itself into phenomenon. For the sake of convenience, we speak of mind as the intelligence. But when it does not respond to circumstances, it cannot be spoken of in such dualistic terms as existence or non-existence. Besides, even when engaged in creating objects in response to causality, it is still imperceptible. If you know this, and rest in tranquility and nothingness, then you are indeed following the way of the Buddhists. Therefore does the sutra say, develop a mind which rests on no thing whatever. Every one of the sentient beings bound to the wheel of alternating life and death is recreated from the karma of his own desires. Endlessly, their hearts remain bound to the 6 states of existence, thereby involving them in all sorts of sorrow and pain. Ch'ing Ming says, there are people with minds like those of apes, who are very hard to teach, People who need all sorts of precepts and doctrines with which to force their hearts into submission. So, when thoughts arise, all sorts of dharmas follow, but they vanish with thought's cessation. We can see from this that every sort of dharma is but a creation of mind, and all kinds of beings, humans, devas, sufferers in hells, asuras, and all comprised within the 6 forms of life, each one of them is mind created. If only you would learn how to achieve a state of non-intellection. Immediately, the chain of causation would snap. Give up those erroneous thoughts leading to false distinctions. There is no self, and no other. There is no wrong desire, no anger, no hatred, no love, no victory, no failure. Only renounce the error of intellectual or conceptual thought processes, and your nature will exhibit its pristine purity, for this alone is the way to attain enlightenment. To observe the Dharma, law, to become a Buddha, and all the rest, unless you unless you understand this, the whole of your great learning, your painful efforts to advance, your austerities of diet and clothing will not help you to a knowledge of your own mind. All such practices must be termed fallacious, for any of them would lead to your rebirth among demons, the enemies of truth, or among the crude nature spirits. What is served by pursuits like those? Chun Kung said, "Our bodies are the creation of our own minds. But how can one expect to gain such knowledge from books? If you could only comprehend the nature of your own mind and put an end to discriminatory thought, there would naturally be no room for even a grain of error to arise." Ching Ming expressed it in this verse. Just spread out a mat for reclining quite flat, when thoughts tied to a bed, like a sick man growing worse, all karma will cease and all fantasies disperse. That's what's meant by Bodhi. You can almost put a tune to that. As it is, so long as your mind is subject to the slightest movement of thought, you will remain engulfed in the error of taking ignorant and enlightened for separate states. This error will persist regardless of your vast knowledge of the Mahayana or of your ability to pass through the 4 grades of sainthood and the 10 stages of progress leading to enlightenment. For all these pursuits belong to what is ephemeral. Even the most strenuous of your efforts is doomed to fail, just as an arrow shot never so high into the air must inevitably fall spent to the earth. So, in spite of them, you are certain to find yourselves back on the wheel of life and death. Indulging in such practices implies your failure to understand the Buddha's real meaning. Surely the endurance of so much unnecessary suffering is nothing but a gigantic error, isn't it? Chun Kung says elsewhere, "If you do not meet with a teacher able to transcend the worlds, you will go on swallowing the medicine of the Mahayana Dharma quite in vain." Will you know to practice keeping your minds motionless at all times, whether talking, walking, standing, sitting, or lying, concentrating entirely upon the goal of no thought creation, no duality, no reliance on others, and no attachments, just allowing things to take their course the whole day long, as though you were too ill to bother, unknown to the world, innocent of any urge to be known or unknown to others. with your minds like blocks of stone that made no holes. Then all these dharmas would penetrate your understanding through and through. I like it. Go here. And it starts. I like this. Okay. I like parking my books. Alright. In a little while, you would find yourselves firmly unattached. Thus, for the first time in your lives, you would discover your reactions to phenomenon decreasing, and, ultimately, you would pass beyond the triple world, and people would say that a Buddha had just appeared in the world. Pure and passionless knowledge implies putting an end to the ceaseless flow of thoughts and images. For, in that way, you stop creating the karma that leads to rebirth, whether as gods, or men, or as sufferers in hell. Once every sort of mental process has ceased, you unruly bastard. Once every sort of mental process has ceased, not a particle of karma is formed. Then, even in this life, your minds and bodies become those of a being completely liberated. Supposing that this does not result in freeing you immediately from further rebirths, at the very least, you will be short of a rebirth in accordance with your own wishes. Alright, so that's almost like what Boyan said. Even if you don't make it, dude, you've made forward progress, and you're definitely a much better person. You'll have a much better personal rebirth. Ah. I have all leeches. I didn't have time to eat breakfast this morning. And I'll be getting my teeth tomorrow. So yay! I'll have teeth in the morning or the afternoon. So very difficult not being able to chew anything. Alright. The sutra declares, Bodhisattvas are re-embodied into whatever forms they desire. But were they suddenly to lose the powers of keeping their minds free from conceptual thought, attachment to form would drag them back into the phenomenal world. And each of those forms would create for them a demon's karma. With the practices of the Pure Land Buddhists, it is also thus. For all these practices are productive of karma. Hence, we may call them Buddha hindrances, as they would obstruct your mind. The chain of causation would also grapple you fast, dragging you back into the state of those as yet unliberated. Hence, all dharmas, such as those purporting to lead to the attainment of Bodhi, possess no reality. The words of Gautama Buddha were indeed merely as efficacious expedients for leading men out of the darkness of worse ignorance. It was as though one pretended yellow leaves were gold to stop the flow of a child's tears. Samyak Sambodhi is another name for the realization that there are no valid dharmas. Once you understand this, of what use are such trifles to you? According harmoniously with the conditions of your present lives, you should go on, as opportunities arise, reducing the old store of karma laid up in previous lives, and, above all, you must avoid building up a fresh store of retribution for yourselves. Mind is filled with radiant clarity, so cast away the darkness of your old concepts. Qing Ming says, rid yourselves of everything. The sentence in the Lotus Sutras concerning the whole 20 years spent in the shoveling away of manure symbolizes the necessity of driving from your minds whatever tends to be the formations of concepts, tends to the formation of concepts. In another passage, the sutra identifies the pile of dung which has to be carted away with metaphysics and sophistry. Thus, the womb of the Tathagatas is intrinsically a voidness and silence containing no individualized dharmas of any sort or kind. Therefore, says the sutra, the entire realms of all the Buddhas are equally void. Though others may talk of the way of Buddhas as something to be reached by the various pious practices in sutra study, you must have nothing to do with such ideas. A perception, sudden as a blinking, that subject and object are one, will lead to a deeply mysterious, wordless understanding, and by this understanding, you will awaken to the truth of Zen. When you happen upon someone who has no understanding, you must claim to know nothing. He may be delighted by his discovery of some way to enlightenment, yet if you allow yourself to be persuaded by him, you will experience no delight at all, but suffer from sorrow and disappointment. What have such thoughts as his to do with the study of Zen? Even if you do obtain from him some trifling method, it will only be a thought-constructed dharma having nothing to do with Zen. Thus, Bodhidharma sat rapt in meditation before while he did not seek to lead people into having opinions. Therefore it is written, to put out of mind even the principal form with action springs, to put out of mind even the principle from which action springs is the true teaching of the Buddhas, while dualism belongs to the sphere of demons. Your true nature is something never lost to you, even in moments of delusion. Neither is it gained at the moment of enlightenment. It is the nature of the Bhuttata Satta. In it is neither delusion nor right understanding. It fills the void everywhere and is intrinsically of the surface of the one mind. How then can your mind-created objects exist outside of the void? The void is fundamentally without spatial dimensions, passions, activities, delusions, or right understanding. You must clearly understand that in it there are no things, no men, and no Buddhas. For this void contains not the smallest hair's breadth of anything that can be viewed spatially. It depends on nothing, and is attached to nothing. It is all-pervading, spotless beauty. It is the self-existent and uncreated absolute. How then could it be a matter for discussion that the real Buddha has no mouth and preaches no dharma, or that the real hearing requires no ears, for who could hear it? It is a jewel beyond all price. Alright, let's start here. Cut this one short. Perfect. We got this reading in. Alright. See you next time.